Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button, and keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as, investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy.
All right, folks, here we are on Sunday, September 24th. We're going to take a look at 6 stocks today. We're going to start here with T2, flip over to NIO, Upstart, NKLA, MCOM, and finish off with DNA. We're going to start here on the Webull chart for each of them, make any adjustments or add-ins to support and resistance levels, as well as trend lines, and then we're going to flip over to the Think or Swim study and look at where things are situated in the channel, the overall trend, and the TTM squeeze indicator. All right, so kicking off with T2, we see we have a bunch of levels on the chart here. We see it's dipping into a gap here, not a literal gap, but a gap in the price action that we had. So we had put in all these levels, and then we had just sort of put a pin in the map here of 2278 to sort of look and coincide with this previous price action over here when it had dipped below. So I think we have some levels that we can fill in since the price is below this 25.78 level, and there is, like I say, it's only 3 cents, but you know, that's a pretty big percentage change since the price is just 25 cents at the moment. So let's see what price action, what levels we can snatch from here. So I'm going to put the bottom of this candle body with the wick here, near miss off the wick there, and basically near on the wick in the most recent candle. If we scroll further left, yeah, I feel good about that. Then it's going to get really tight, so we might have to zoom into a lower time frame to get anything useful. Okay, I'm going to go into the hour and see if on the hour anything else sort of stands out. We might even have to go lower time frame. All right, I'm going to go all the way down to the 10 minutes and just see intraday. If we had had these levels on the chart, where would we have been disappointed? Okay, I'm going to, there may be a level here-ish. Let's see, do we want it all the way up here? No. I'll put a level here. I'm going to dot it. And if you're new, the solid lines are typically charted on the daily chart. The dotted lines are charted on some lower time frame. And the idea there just being that if it's dotted, it might be a little weaker or a little more short-lived because it's coming in from a lower time frame, less price action, though sometimes more recent price action. So not a ton of additional levels that I would add in here. Trying to see what may be around here, since we still have a pretty big gap in this area. Yeah, again, these are relatively weak. I'd maybe put one here. I'm really kind of stretching though, to be honest. This one is a little bit better than that last one that I just put in, but I'm going to dot all of these. So we have 3 dotted ones, 25, 20, 26, 33, 26, 88. And again, I know it seems like they're very close in, but if you're just coming into the day and this is your pre-market activity, you know, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 levels on the chart. And for a stock that moves as much as T2, that's not a crazy thing to be looking at, in my opinion. So if you don't like it, obviously, use your own anyway. But that's what I'm looking at the moment. So those are the levels as I see it on T2 as we head into tomorrow. Now, you know, if it dips down below, there's just not a lot to pull from between that. Sorry, this is probably nauseating. Just not a lot to pull from between this 24.47 and this 22.78. So I'm going to put a level in here of this recent candle, 23.49, if it'll let me pin it to that. Yep, it will. Okay, so we're going to put the level in there, 23.49. just for lack of any other clear price action throughout that range, but also just to say like, hey, if you're looking at recent swings, this was the most recent swing down, and the low came in at that 23.49. So I'd keep an eye on that. So I don't know if that'll even show up on the intraday. Yeah, maybe if you zoom out a little bit, it will. Yeah, eventually, but that's going to be too far away to be looking. So if it dips below this 24.47 level that we have heading into tomorrow, then you'll clearly see that level in the 23s. All right, so on the Think or Swim study, just keep in mind this is on the hour time frame. So we had this period of time, these hour candles that were outside the upper bound of the channel. And then what do we always look for? We always look for it to come down and test the mid-range, that bright blue in the middle of the channel. And when it did that, it immediately flipped it to resistance and then started pushing and could never regain support over that mid-range of the channel. As you can see, kept trying, but it couldn't regain support. And that's caused it to just continuously be pummeled between the mid-range of the channel and the lower bound of the channel. And now, in the most recent price action, as of Friday, it was stuck under the red wave cloud, which is, if you're a bull, not where you want to be, because that means that the bearish momentum is just incredibly strong, and it's not even allowing the price action to test the lower bound of the channel and then try the mid-range. It's just caught under this wave cloud. Obviously, worse than that would be if it was caught underneath the lower bound of the channel and treating that as resistance. That is extreme. So this is sort of like mid-extreme, but it's definitely worse for the bulls than if it were able to test the mid-range of the channel. So that's the first thing I'm going to look for throughout the beginning of this trading week is when is it able to at least muster the mobility, if you will, to test the mid-range of the channel. That's going to be the first key component to me. Beyond that, TTM squeeze indicator, while the price is still sort of drawing down / going a little sideways toward the end of the day, we do see the bearish momentum maybe dying down a little bit. Nothing triggering yet. It was triggering back here on, I guess that was Thursday, and then when it fired, obviously we got this big push down. So that fired at about 28-ish cents, and then we worked ourselves down to about 24. So pretty big percentage move. So pretty good call out there on the TTM squeeze indicator. So we'll see if and when it starts to trigger once again with the red dots on the TTM squeeze indicator. All right, so we're going to flip over to NIO. So NIO, zoom back out to the daily. I'll have to keep remembering to do that. So we have this big gap is the first thing that I would note. So I'm going to put the gap here. What's the low of this day? 22. Let's see if it'll let me. Okay, 22. So I'm going to put this in gray so that it doesn't super stand out, but when we get there, we will certainly notice it on the chart. The high of this day was 960. All right, 960. All right, so we will enter the gap at 960, and we will fill the gap at 1022. So that's, again, quite a percentage change if it's able to do that from where we find ourselves at 853 at the moment. And we have a bunch of levels that we need to put down here. So let's see. Luckily, well, I guess luckily or not, we have recent price action in this range. So we want to put in some levels, maybe in the mid-range, like while we're in that gap, but we'll let the gaps stay there as a predominant force as well. I would say right about here. Let me see if I want to adjust that at all. No, I'm happy with that. 988 if you're in the gap. And then let's see what we have here below the gap. So closer in to current price action. Let's see. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. 923. And we'll keep getting closer and closer to the current range to hold tight. 880. Now we're getting mighty close. Okay, I'm happy with this here. 843. It's going to be quite a few because obviously it was on the move in this range and then sort of kept shifting back and forth through up and down, and it's just the roller coaster will end up giving you quite a few levels, which it's going to look cluttered on the daily. We have to admit that, but when you zoom in, it's going to look okay. 778, and let's see. I want this here. Yeah, I think we need it there, even though it's pretty close in. We certainly need one here. And then it gets pretty thin. But let's see. Say this one might make sense. Okay. So those are the levels as I see it now. If we zoom in on the 10-minute, say, yeah, I mean, big gap coming in to open, and it filled it throughout the day, but it basically came in, couldn't get over this 880, had left this big gap in the pre-markets hours, and so then what's it going to do? It's going to fill it intraday. It doesn't always happen intraday, of course, but it didn't necessarily have a any price action above 880, so it didn't have any way to further its gains there, and so it got drawn down, and then even just right here it was already in the gap, so it came down, didn't quite reach that 843, came down to about 848 or so, and then sort of just upward fizzled into close. So this is the zoom out. So if it starts to lose this tomorrow, I would look for it to maybe push toward 808, and then this is also a pretty big gap. So probably something to pay attention to around this. What is this going to be? Hard to put a level in here. I don't know why my cursor keeps disappearing. That's not super helpful. Around 839, 840, there might be a little level there as well if it slips to 843, but I'm not going to put that in the moment. That's going off a very thin price action. But we'll see what it's looking like going into open tomorrow. The pre-market hours might give us some sort of factor to pay attention to, and if it does, I'll try to tweet it out or exit out, whatever the verb is these days, and go from there. So here we gotta flip this over to NIO. All right, on NIO we can still pay attention to the daily because it should give us, it'll give us a clear chart. So still on the daily here, we see it has recently slipped the lower bound of the channel. This is pretty ugly though, but so we'll flip over to the hour in a second, but it was triggering here for several candles, right? Triggers, and then it fired, and it's just sort of moving relatively sideways on that fire. So I'm kind of interested to see is that going to be a misfire, sort of a misindication by the indicator, or is it going to amount to something? Sometimes the second move amounts to something if the first move is kind of a dud, but it's outside of the channel. And so what we look for is for it to then revert to the mid-range of the channel. If it were to do that, on the chart that we're looking at right now, it would be 1007, appears to be the mid-range of that channel, if this is correct, that bright blue in the center. So that would be, quite a percentage change. Now, I don't know, when it will try to revert to the mid-range of that channel. So that's going to be the question, because those prices in the channel obviously change every time a candle gets put in. So let's look at the hour here. This is the 180 to 200 EMA cloud. So if and when it starts to push up toward that level, or this swoops down to it, that could add some additional resistance. But on the hour, it's in the channel, testing the mid-range as we see here. This is sort of what I was talking about on the daily. You see it came out the bottom of the lower bound of the channel, and then we just wait and look for it to retest the mid-range. You don't know when it's going to happen, but this is a pretty clean movement directly sort of on a diagonal to the mid-range of the channel, tested it, shrugged it off, and then continued to get shrugged off, which then further sold off, flipped it on Friday, but it couldn't hold it, right? It couldn't even hold it into the open, really. Just got pinned underneath and didn't get shoved all the way down to the lower bound, but certainly continued to remain stuck under the mid-range of the channel. So that's the thing that I'm looking for in the hour for the time being, is can it regain support over the mid-range of that channel? And then if so, what does it do with it? Does it just kind of pin there? Is it able to push toward the upper bound of the channel? That's what you'd want to see if you were a bull. But time will tell. All right, so let's flip over to Upstart, get our daily out here. And so Upstart was in this sort of brief channel down here, and then it was able to make an escape. But then all too often, what we see when something escapes the channel is it just sort of continues on its merry way. If it isn't able to get some decent distance from the channel, it essentially just continues to follow the channel, but just outside of the channel. And so that's what you see here. It was able to get about 5 candles or so distance, and it just wasn't enough. And then it was just too easy for it to draw right back in to test that channel on this candle. And then it's just continued to essentially follow the upper realm of the channel down as what I can sort of coin as downtrend support. So instead of downtrend resistance, it's sort of downtrend support. And you see today, additionally so, it's putting in a trend line of its own. This might trace back to this candle body, actually, if we want it to. Yeah, so right about here, it's putting in this downtrend. Depends how sort of aggressive or conservative you want to go with it. But, that could start to converge as time goes on. So we'll sort of keep all of this here for the time being. You do have a bit of a gap here, which was filled, it looks like, on Friday. But yeah, it's caught both. It's essentially caught in a little bit of a down channel at the moment. So that's just what happens when, something tries to leave the channel and doesn't get enough distance, and it gets sucked right back down toward it. Not into it, but toward it. And now it's just in a different down channel. So we'll see how that progresses, but obviously the most important thing, aside from any of these support and resistance levels, is going to be that it breaks this downtrend resistance and actually gets some meaningful distance from it. Much more meaningful than this, obviously, so that it can, either set a base, set a floor, or reverse trend, or something like that. So we have some additional levels that it's probably useful to put in here between this, when we get price action back above this 29, well, we might put in some levels. Let's just say we'll put in some levels here between 29 and 25. Since it's pretty barren in there, we just have this 27.86. So let's see what's kind of making sense. Let's see if I scroll left. Okay, so I want, what did I just say, between 20? Okay, let's see what we got here. This would have been what we put in the levels from already. So I don't know if there's going to be a ton of additional stuff to draw from here. So we might have to go with more recent price action, but let's at least take a look. Okay, there's a level here, I would say. Top of this candle body, bottom of this candle body. Pretty tight. 26.61. $24.95. Okay, that might be all we can glean at the moment. So let's go back to our recent price action and see what additional levels sort of make sense. Yeah, this is pretty thin. Okay, we'll put in a level here, 28.92. 29.29. Yeah, we might have to zoom in. Let's zoom in and pick out some levels from about the last 3 days or so. Okay, so now we start to see it gets a little bit more clear. Level here, 28.47. And like I say, I put in these levels on the daily to sort of look at them intraday anyway, so I don't feel super weird about putting these in. And then I'm not going to dot them, which I usually do, just because there isn't really a lot to compare it to on the daily. If there becomes things to compare it to on the daily, I'll just adjust the levels if needed. But for the time being, these make sense to me. There's kind of a lot of space here. I could put a level there. Okay, I like that one better. Okay, so these are the levels currently as I see it. So we'll see if it comes in, above this 26.25 or what it's doing at this 26.61 into open tomorrow. If it does dip below what it does at this 25.94 or what it does at this 27 attempt, if it is able to push up toward that. Now on the think or swim study, let's plug this in. This is on the hour time frame, FYI. So you do see the 180 to 200 EMA clouds swooping in here. So when the price action in this converge, we could look for some additional resistance there. But that may take quite some time, who knows. But, tried to push to the upper bound of the channel here and actually came darn close to the cloud. But then immediately got drawn back down to the mid-range of the channel, this bright blue, and then just kept sort of shoving off, and then it left the channel to the downside there. So what do we look for? We look for it to retrace back to the mid-range of the channel. It did that relatively quickly, tested it, and pushed off of it again. So this is sort of a three-pronged attempt, if you want to include this one. Basically say, once out of the channel, and then twice, and now coming back for maybe a third. See if that third time's the charm, if you will, or what sort of happens on that movement. The other thing to take note of are all of these candles throughout the day on Friday were triggering, and then it fired, and then it just moved sideways on the fire. So my question is going to be, is there a move that's going to kick off Monday and or persist through Monday, or is it going to need to re-trigger and refire again? Sometimes that's just the way that it takes shape on the TTM squeeze indicator. You look for the second round of trigger and fire for the actual move to come, but or sometimes it just misfires and just the indicator doesn't really give you any useful information, if you will. So that could, of course, also be the case. But I'm interested to see do things kick off pretty strong on Monday in one way or the other, or I'll be looking for the next motion of that, if not. All right, where do we go from here? From here we go to NKLA. Okay, so we're only halfway through. This is going to be a beast of a video. All right, so zooming out here. Okay, so at least this is in the midst of levels, and maybe we don't have to add a bunch in here, which would be helpful. Though then I immediately see a level that I want to add in. Okay, so this has sort of developed a 13, or I guess 130, not 13, 130.2 level. And then, yeah, this dotted line still hasn't, we'll see if it comes down here, this 110 level, sometime next week, if that sort of makes that a real level, if you will. I'm a real boy. But I would say there's a level here as well. 115, say. All right, so those are the levels as I see it. Let's just zoom in and take a look. Pretty ugly barcode kind of chart. Well, not too bad. Obviously in the off-market hours, but intraday, not too bad, but not beautiful. But came in here, couldn't, heading into the day, breach that 130, came down, bounced right off the 120, and then just, but bounced right back off of the 130. So came down 120, slipped it, didn't quite need to come all the way down to that 115, just kind of pinned itself here and then made, little, whatever that other stock was that we said sort of trickled up into close. So these levels are holding up pretty well, in my opinion. Keeps sort of battling with them, basing above and below them intraday. So I'm pleased with those. Let's see where NKLA is moving channel-wise on the hour time frame. Just keep in mind this is on the hour time frame. So we had a trigger and a fire way back here. So it's pretty decent move, I guess. 143. Yeah. So I mean, you're talking about a pretty good percentage change. 143 down to about 117 or so. 119 maybe. And so pretty good call out there in the TTM squeeze indicator. Still going through its firing phase. And we see a bunch of hiccups. So really unsmooth action. You see this is pretty smooth action. Nice clear build up, clear drawdown, and then just kind of moving sideways. But then when this big movement came, it was like clear build up and then hiccup, 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 just hiccup for several candles and several days, and not really giving clear indication on the histogram where the buildup and the drawdown are. So it's getting pretty light on the bearish momentum at the moment. Like this is getting pretty close to the baseline. So we'll see if that's, if there's something there that's able to flip the script and potentially try to counter this downtrend. But for the time being, we also see, I guess here was out the upper bound of the channel, tested the mid-range, tried to gain and keep support, a little run toward the upper bound there, but then, lost support here, tested the lower bound, confirmed resistance, and then pinned itself to the lower bound, which is not what you want to see if you're a bull. But it was able to test the mid-range here, but then got pushed right off. Basically tested again, pushed right off, but each attempt back toward the mid-range from this one to this one, maybe to this one, is getting harder and harder to even reach toward the mid-range of that channel, which again, if you're a bull, is not what you want to see. So what I'm going to be interested to see coming into this week is, does it get trapped under this red cloud, whereby that's the resistance level? It can't even reach the blue mid-range of the channel. Is it pinned to the bottom of the channel like we see here? Does it leave the bottom of the channel like we see here? Or is it able to test the mid-range of the channel like we see here, and maybe even try to overcome it like we see here and try to build support, right? And then what does it do if it does get support over that level? So that's going to be the most important thing to me. Where does this find resistance, and what does it do with that resistance? Lower bound, worst case, red cloud, next worst case, mid-range, sort of normal case. All right, MCOM. Oh, I don't need to type it in here. Okay, MCOM. Let's get out to the daily. Oh boy. Okay, so in the daily here, so we're starting to dip a bit below, so we're going to need some levels to put in here. Luckily, we have decent price action, I think. Yeah, so there's a level here. Let's see, does this smooth it out if I put it here? Yeah, I'd keep it there maybe. 643. Okay, and then we dip below that. 628. These are fractions of pennies, but I mean, this is a very, very low price stock. 616. I'm not really sure how low we should go here. There might be some price action that gets filled in between this, but just above 6. Yeah, then it sort of gets too thin to tell, so I'm not going to go below that, but let's zoom in intraday and see what this would have looked like. Again, very barcodey, but couldn't overcome the 687, slipped right through, really. I mean, I guess a little bit here, but mostly slipped through this 672 directly to the 659, so retested that 672, which is what you usually look for, got pushed right back down, and then slipped the level again, just shy of that 643, and then came back up into close, again trying to retest that 659. So constantly trying to test and retest these levels, but not really able to make any flip anything from resistance to support. It's just sort of like confirm resistance, lose support, confirm resistance, lose support, level after level. So yeah, and even on this day, you see a nice push up here. So, it does have, possibilities in recent days of trying to move up, but it's just going to have to see how quickly that peters out, and then how sort of severe the retracement is, right? Because it had a nice push up here, but then it retraced like darn close to 100%, down here to about 650 something, and the low was 630, it looks like. Yeah. So MCOM, yeah, sort of in a little bit of a tough spot here. Let me see if I zoom back out to the daily just to take another quick look. Yeah, it's just really choppy, right? It's just clearly kind of basing in this range over here. So let's see what Thinkorswim has to say about this. Sometimes it gives nice clarity on the chop with the channel. Yeah, so chopping here through the channel, again, this is on the hour. Oh, interesting. Okay, so chopping on the mid-range of the channel here, just constantly kind of batting itself between the lower mid-range of the channel, which is this one, and the actual mid-range of the channel, which is the bright blue. And so following it slightly down, but mostly sideways, if we had to choose one or the other, I would say. But you see this lengthy trigger that it's putting in. And really there's a few like hiccups of fires, but I mean this trigger you could claim goes all the way back here, right? And so this could be sort of like 4 or 5 days in, something like that. So I'm interested to see when that puts in a lengthy fire, does that result in a really big move? A lengthy trigger like this may, again, TTM squeeze is an indicator. No indicator is perfect. No indicator is 100%. So sometimes it triggers for a long time and then fires and basically nothing happens. So just keep in mind that can be the case, but I would at least be interested to see what happens with such a lengthy trigger when it does start to fire, if there's a sustained fire, not just this like 1 or 3 candle, especially in off hours sort of blip on the screen. So that is of interest to me. What's going to happen there? Yeah, otherwise it's just sort of moving sideways but pinned to the mid-range of the channel, which is kind of what you would expect. But most interesting to me that it is triggering for a long period of time at the moment. Lastly, but not leastly, oh, I don't care about that. Okay, DNA. So we have a bunch of levels in here below where the price action is. That's because this may have been about where we were when we charted. I don't recall off the top of my head. We do have this gap that was left on this big up 24% day that has now been filled. So, could sort of say congrats for filling the sorry, I'm seeing if there's a level here. This is me getting stuck. Okay, I'm gonna add a level in here. Okay, so back to the narration. Congrats on filling the gap, but now the question is, what are you gonna do? So it's batting the last couple of days, obviously between this basically, say 179 down to 175. We have a level above that at 184. I would maybe add a level in, and when we zoom in, this will, like I said, look less chaotic and clustered. Okay, 182-ish. I'd add a level there. Now let's put some in here just in case it decides to push. Ooh, that's a good level. 189. I like that level a lot. It gets a bit thin in here. It's a pretty solid level, 196, but it's big percentage gap still in the price action that's left between those levels. There's several gaps in percentage change of price action still within these levels. So let's zoom in and see. So these are the levels that I'm going to keep on the chart. Super barcodey, just hard to look at. But you see it trying to base over levels, just kind of, like we said, it's just moving sideways, right? So just really, is it going to slip this? Is it going to be able to flip this? those are the questions. Slip or flip is basically my question. Is it going to slip 175, confirm it as resistance, and head down to the next level? Or is it going to be able to flip 179 from resistance to support, and then maybe make an attempt at 182? So flipping over to the think or swim study, DNA. All right, on the hour, things are looking like this. So, moving sideways, but at least the moving sideways here resulted in, hey, we were trying to get support over the mid-range. We're fighting with it a little bit. We tested the upper bound in the off-market hours, slipped all the way down to the lower bound of the channel, and then just moved ourselves sideways, but at least moved ourselves sideways in such a way that it allowed us to attempt to once again test the mid-range of the channel. So that's what it's doing at the moment. Obviously still caught in a downtrend on the hour, but also basically all day Friday, putting in a trigger the entire day with all the candles on the TTM squeeze indicator. And this is sort of the second motion. You see here, we had trigger and fire, which didn't really result in anything except for this sideways motion and then now re-triggering. So like I've said with the other tickers, if you haven't watched them, is sometimes the move comes on the second trigger and fire. So sometimes it's trigger, fire, nothing happens, and then re-trigger, and then re-fire, and that's where something happens. But also, sometimes TTM squeeze indicator being an indicator, sometimes it just gives you a misindication and nothing happens. So that can absolutely be the case. You could basically do this again, trigger and fire, and just be a total dud. But we'll have to wait and see. But I am interested to at least see what that second trigger and fire does, because it could lead to something. All right, folks. I hope that you have enjoyed your weekend and that you kick off the trading week really strong tomorrow. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.